Well, hey there, Mama, and welcome back to the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast, episode number 200. I can't believe I'm at 200. It seems hard to believe. So glad that you are here today. We have an amazing episode with Rachelle Crawford from Abundant Life with Less, and she is the author of Messy Minimalism, which if you haven't read it, definitely read that. But she has a new book that just came out this week called How to Be Busy, Unhurried Living, Even When Your Calendar is Chaotic. And we are talking a lot today about why, if we can't escape being busy, because sometimes we just are in busy seasons, how we can go about it and be busy well. So the difference between being busy and hurrying, and why the seasonality of being busy and our capacity are really important to consider, and that most time management books ignore completely. And the great concept of bubble wrapping our busy seasons on the front and back end. And finally, her 5-step busy protocol. And to celebrate the 200th episode of the show, and also her book, I am going to be giving away a copy of her book, How to Be Busy. So you can check the show notes for information on the giveaway. But essentially, if you leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts for the show, only if you haven't done it before, I know many of you have, which I appreciate. Alternatively, you can share it with a friend via text or social media. And then if you're doing the review, which the reviews mean so much and really helps the show be seen by other moms, so I really appreciate that. You'll want to screenshot the review before you submit, because sometimes Apple Podcasts, it can take a couple days to show up. Or obviously, if you're texting it, you can just screenshot what you texted and then email me at info@simplebyemmy.com before 8 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, July 22nd, so you have a little less than a week, to be eligible to win a copy of Rachelle's book. So a little bit more about Rachelle. She is a blogger over at Abundant Life with Less. And in addition to writing, she's a registered nurse. She also works at as the school nurse at the school her children attend, which I think is so cool. And she lives in Michigan with her husband and her 3 kiddos. So grab that notebook and pen, and let's dive into today's conversation with Rachelle Crawford. Hey Mama, are you tired of your cluttered home and mile-long to-do lists but are too overwhelmed to know where to start? Do you lack the time and motivation and don't think you'll ever conquer the clutter? You're in the right place. I'm Emily, wife, boy mom, and declutter coach who has overcome the overwhelm in my own life through decluttering and simplifying. I believe every mom deserves the peace that comes from a clutter-free home. Ready to get your life back? Let's declutter your home, head, and heart together. Well, hey, Rachelle, thank you so much for coming on the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast. I am thrilled to talk to you today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I've been following you for a while and getting your emails and read can't even say it. Messy Minimalism. It's a mouthful. People say that about my show. They're like, "What's your podcast?" I'm like, "Moms Overcoming Overwhelm." And they're like, "That's..."
Yeah.
But I'm really excited about your new book that we're going to dive into in just a minute. How to Be Busy. I love that. How to be busy. Don't be busy. It's not, we live in
Right.
a fantasy world where we have all of this time. It's how to be busy, unhurried living, even when your calendar is chaotic, which for the overwhelmed mamas that are listening, that's probably a given that you might be in a
Yeah.
chaotic season right now. But before we jump in, could you tell us a little bit about you and your family, kind of what you do day to day, and maybe like one thing you like to do for fun?
Yeah. So I have 3 kids. They are 15, 13, and 9. I have been married to my high school sweetheart for 20 years. I work as a school nurse part-time, which I love. I started that about 5 years ago. And yeah, I just love it. It's such it, I am the nurse where my kids go to school. So I get to be a part of that and see, keep my finger on the pulse and listen up. So that's been a lot of fun. For fun, I love to travel. I love getting outside with my kids. And one fun thing I do is tap maple syrup. I tap trees for maple syrup. I started doing that. We moved last year, and our property comes with a bunch of trees, maple trees. So we started doing that last year. Took a break this year, which I'll get more into as we talk today. But I'm excited to start back over again next year. It's so fun and refreshing to be outside and
Yeah.
delicious. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you also talk a little bit in the book about mushroom hunting.
Oh, yes, that is
Yeah.
my and we're getting, my daughter said the other day, Mom, it's getting closer to mushroom season because the spring is when they start coming out. And yeah, we're super excited. We love mushroom hunting. We've been doing that for since my kids were really little.
Wow.
Always been a terrible mushroom finder, but recently we've gotten better. But yeah, it's a lot of fun and it just keeps you outside.
Yeah, love that. And then also, like, the kids are incentivized to be doing these activities because you get something
Yeah.
delicious at the end.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We have a pasta dish that is like amazing. Everybody
Mm.
loves it. And oh, yeah, with the mushrooms that you found yourself, it makes it even more delicious.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love your new book for a variety of reasons. I was saying before we hit record, it's just very relatable and laugh out loud, like soap soup. These are just some
Yeah.
previews, everyone. Soap soup, cutting off your fingertip when you are slicing a loaf of bread.
Yep.
And then this adorable Grandma Sally, which right now I am binging The Golden Girls. And
Oh,
so
wonderful.
I feel like I'm in my Grandma Sally era, you know?
Yeah, I love it.
So, so there's just the relatability of how you can bring these concepts of how we can be busy well and then kind of interweave them with these personal examples is really great. But I want to start with sort of this premise of the book, which is that we have these busy times, these busy seasons, but there's a
Mhm.
big difference between busy and being hurried. And that
Right.
is a really fundamental, important difference. So I was wondering if we could start with kind of, in your own words, like what's the difference and
Yeah.
what does it matter between the two?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times busy and hurry. Oh, I'm in a hurry. Oh, I'm busy. They're kind
Mhm.
of used as synonyms. But in the book, I describe the difference based off of like when I went minimalist was about 8 years ago. And it was a matter of just within that first year, I realized that like picture perfect minimalism was not going to work for our family. We're a messy family. We love making messes and it doesn't typically bother me until all of a sudden it does, right? So I realized that's where messy minimalism came from, is kind of like made it more realistic and made it more my own. And one of the things I discovered at the time was how much minimalism could simplify my calendar and reduce the number of activities we did and just give us a lot more margin and downtime. But then all of a sudden, years later, as I'm still living minimally and still applying these principles to my life in our calendar, I found myself busy. And I was like, oh, goodness, clearly I'm doing something wrong if I'm still this busy. And so I'd try and readjust. And then I'd find myself busy again and busy again. And I started to feel like, what am I like simplifying my life and living simply and living as a minimalist? Like, those are really important things to me. So, how come I keep finding myself super, super busy? And I started to realize like I'm in a totally different season of life than I was when I first went minimalist. And my kids have extracurricular activities that are not just like parks and rec things we can opt in and out of, but instead they're like passions and they have to be there and they have to show up for the things that are important to them the same way I have to show up to the things that are important to me. So I started to realize like, okay, busyness is just like sometimes it's just a matter of logistics. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's a matter of the calendar and the number of things you have to do in a day, where hurry is more like a state of mind. And that's the differentiation I make in the book, is that no matter what you have to do in a day or in a week or during a certain season or time of year, you can approach it with a more unhurried mindset, where hurry is the kind of thing where it's like we're living distracted, we're overwhelmed, we have overcommitted, because sometimes you can overbook your
Yeah.
calendar, right? Hurry kind of just leaves you feeling like you can't live present because you're just trying to be, always paying attention to what's happening next. So I like to talk about how we can live into our busy seasons and learn to not just survive them, but enjoy them by making some choices and eliminating and saying no where we can,
Yeah.
so that we can live more present and enjoy those busy seasons. Because I mean, while we have a lot to do right now in our life, when I take a step back and I approach it with with an unhurried mindset, I feel like I'm able to be present and I'm able to enjoy it. And my kids get a version of me that I'm proud of and that they can connect with. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
definitely. And I think that as you're talking about, the seasonality and how it's not apples to apples if you're looking at
Right.
two moms that maybe one has like a preschooler and one has high schoolers, like it's just totally different as far as what
Yeah.
we are doing in our lives, how like what our margin is, what our capacity is, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I also think that when we are hurried, we are, like you said, always looking to the next thing and
Hmm.
wanting to get to the next thing. And I've had many seasons in my life of motherhood that have been hard. And so you're like, oh, someday my kids are going to sleep through the night and someday they're going to be able to, and we're getting there. We got
Right.
we're getting the last one tying his shoes. Like things are happening, but it's like the way you approach it. And when you're present in that moment, that's a lot different than I
Yeah.
want this to end so I can get on
Yeah.
to the next thing. And what if we're wanting in our whole motherhood experience, like you're just waiting for the next thing to happen and the next thing to be done, then you're missing the whole presence and experience of motherhood, which is bad,
Absolutely.
which we don't want, right?
No, not at all. Yeah. Yeah. I think the seasonality, like, was something I didn't really realize early on. And I remember sharing this quote on social media at one point, and I won't share the quote because the quote is amazing. But I remember my cousin reached out to me and she's like, hey, practically speaking, it was like a time management, simplify your life quote. How would you go about implementing this into your life? And I remember, and I talk about it in the book, feeling like, I don't understand what's not to get. Like, it's pretty, self-explanatory, like stop doing too many things. And, I told her, I'm sure I gave her a great response, whatever, but it was just years later that I'm like, oh, she had high schoolers when she was
Mm.
asking me this. Like she was, in her chauffeur era, driving kids around and had to be in a million places. And I'm at home while nap times and early bedtimes and teaching kids to tie shoes brings totally different chaos. It was I had more control over my calendar. Like I didn't have to, my kids' opinions, while they were fine if we were home. They liked being home, actually. It was me that made myself too busy. But now we're in a different season. We're in that same era that my cousin was in when she asked me that. And it's just every new season comes with new challenges and new things to enjoy. And so when we have to approach our calendar completely differently than we do, during each phase, and not even just in like big chunks of time like that, right? But like the fall is different than the summer. Yeah. So
And just not having,
seasonality is really important. Yeah.
yeah, not having that one size fits all, like you said in the book,
Yeah.
where it's like, people, I've been doing this podcast for 2.5 years and I haven't done like a morning routine episode because even though I'd get like
Hmm.
a million downloads on it, it's like it's not one size fits all, right? People are going to be doing different things in their morning depending on what season they're in. So
Yeah.
my personal season isn't the same. And I know that when you wrote the book, it was a very full season. You were moving. When you weren't cutting off
Hmm.
your fingertip, you were
Yeah.
packing. And I love just this analogy that you give as far as like bubble wrapping, because you were in the thick of the packing, all the things. And
Yeah.
I never really thought about this before, as far as like, I've thought about margin quite a bit. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, and there's lots of places notorious for their horrible drivers. I happen to live in an area known for their horrible drivers. And it's very common where people don't leave any space between vehicles. And then if you do, then you're going to get cut off. So you just kind of learn to
Right.
be like here, right beside the car in front of you. But if something unexpected happens, you're going to slam into the car, right? So
Right.
when I think about margin, I think about like driving out, on the highway.
Yeah.
But when you know that you're coming into a busy season, can you tell us like this bubble wrapping concept where we can
Yeah.
recognize for those seasons we know up front that we can
Yeah.
plan for, how can we bubble wrap them and kind of what are the benefits for us doing that?
Yeah. I think for the longest time, I was trying to just kind of take each season as it came and like not I didn't really look at it as seasons, right? I kind of just oh, we're busy. And as soon as this ends, we're going to be unbusy. And then all of a sudden you're busy again. And I wasn't really intentional with the flow and the rhythm of our busy seasons. And I started to realize like the way we traveled across the city with our stuff. We just moved across town, but we wrapped everything in bubble wrap, all the breakable stuff, and that's how I think we need to treat our busy seasons, like bubble wrap or like a breakable artifact, or fine china or whatever. And on both sides of a busy season, you need a buffer. You need something that will allow you to absorb the chaos and rest from the previous chaos, right? So when you know a busy season is coming, giving yourself, whether it's a few evenings or a whole week, or even know like, oh, fall is crazy, so summer we're going to take it easy type of thing, and give yourself a buffer on the front end so that you can enter those notoriously busy seasons rested, ready to take it on, and with confidence. And then as you're in a busy season, looking ahead and seeing, okay, this is when I anticipate that our life is going to slow down. And we can all do that, right? Be like, oh, after, like I said, after a couple weeks, it's gonna slow down again, and then it never does, because we let ourselves fill it, or we let the world take it. So we can look ahead at our busy seasons that are coming to an end and guard that and protect that on the other side, so that we have an opportunity to refresh and slow down and feel like a person again, as opposed to just somebody who's running this relay race, leg after leg, without ever taking a breath.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love as far as like leaving space and not
Yeah.
filling it. So I've been on the minimalist path about the same amount of time as you, and I love it when I go into people's houses and I'm helping them with decluttering and everything. And I'm like, you could have an empty shelf. And they're
Yeah.
like, what? Like, no,
Yeah.
no, you can't. No, you can't. That looks weird because I feel like as humans, our tendency is, oh, that is empty. I need to fill it. Like I need
Yep.
to fill that thing. And we're the same in our calendars. Like I will say in the area where I live, and I'm sure it's similar, especially in the season your kids are in with the sports and all the activities. If we have a weekend, because we're kind of in between sports seasons right now, if we have
Yep.
a weekend that's like free, I'm like, oh, wow, that's weird. Like we should
Yeah.
be we should be doing something. We
Yeah.
should be going somewhere. And I have to be like, no, like it's gonna ramp up again and to protect that buffer. But I feel
Yep.
like the culture around us does not promote us
Right.
protecting that. So how have you just been able to say, hey, I know that everyone around us is doing this, doing that, all the activities, but we need to like protect our peace and bubble wrap that for a
Yeah.
weekend and not feel like you're missing out? Because I feel like even as minimalists, we can, and that doing this for a while, we can fall prey to the fear of missing out too, because we're human.
Yeah. Yeah. I found that one way that allows me to keep that buffer is by under committing. Like I think
Yeah.
a lot of times we leave just enough margin for us to enjoy, and then oh, we're surprised because somebody gets the flu, or something happens, some commitment came up that we forgot, or a school project my kids forgot about, or they a test they didn't know about, right? And so now all that margin, that in that downtime and that fun family day we plan to spend together has kind of been hijacked. And so I've found we need to give ourselves even more time than we think we're going to need, because it's so easy for that stuff to creep in. So under committing is something that I highly encourage, and I try to do in our family as much as humanly possible. And then learning to say no. A lot of times I think we feel like if we have nothing to do on our calendar, then we feel like we have to say yes. Like we have to have a reason to say no, where we don't just have to look at the calendar and those small time slots that are still available, but we have to assess our capacity, where what we've the season we've just come out of, the season we're heading into, and learning to say no. I've found the best way for me to say no that leaves people like really unable to argue with me is when I say I don't have the capacity for that right now.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry. We can't do that right now. I just don't have the capacity, because nobody can argue with your
Yeah.
capacity. It's yours. It's not a quantitative number like that. So those are some ways that we've found that have been better able to maintain our margin, and
Mhm.
then just really know that you're doing this for yourself, for your family, for future you, for the work that, maybe it's not family that has you super, it's, your kids' extracurricular activities, but maybe it's work or a project you're working on. Like, that's worth giving your whole self to. And if you don't give yourself the opportunity to rest and enter that work recharged and ready to take it on, you're not going to put your whole heart into it.
Yeah, and that reminds me of Dear Grandma Sally. When I read this, I was like laughing that you and your husband were like, "Hey, Grandma Sally, like, can we have dinner?" And she's like,
Yep.
"Oh, I have this morning appointment, so no." And I'm like, "Huh?" But then
Yeah.
I was like, "But we look at our calendar and then, oh, okay, well, can you be available for this thing at 3 o'clock? And you have something ending at 2:15?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, sure."
Yeah.
Like we just like, oh, sure, we have the time on the calendar, but I was recently introduced to this concept of spoon theory, which comes from chronic like illness community, and it's that you only have a certain amount of energy per day that changes. So some days it
Uh-huh.
might be a 12 spoon day, and some days it might be a 4 spoon day, and it just kind of depends. And so if you are looking at your spoons and you're like, yeah, today's a 4 spoon day, then if someone invites you to
Wow. Yeah.
dinner when you have had a morning appointment, you may not have the capacity then. And even
Yeah.
if they look at you like you're crazy, it's okay because you're protecting your spoons, you're protecting your energy. So I just love that like little anecdote of
Yeah.
Grandma Sally because I'm like, what would Grandma Sally do? Like I'm gonna start being more like Grandma Sally when I'm deciding what I'm gonna say yes to. So I love that so
Yeah.
much.
Well, I think it's easy for us to compare ourselves to what other people can do because we
Mhm.
do forget that not everybody has the same threshold for when they're going to feel overwhelmed or how much they can take on. And you also don't have the same capacity that you might have had years ago or you might have in a few years. So we compare ourselves to others. We also compare ourselves to what we've been able to do in the past. And we have to look at our season that we're in and what it requires of us before we make commitments and expectations and goals, even. One thing I've noticed, I love time management books and I love, yeah, self-help books. Like I've always gotten a lot out of them. But what I started to notice that a lot of these time management books tend to be written in sort of a vacuum
Yeah.
by people who are not acknowledging that maybe they're not the one running their kids to soccer practice or canceling their whole day because their kid spiked a fever or threw up in the middle of the night, right?
Mhm.
A lot of times, most of these books are written by men with
Yeah.
someone at home who's doing all the running around for them.
Mhm.
And while I take away a ton of good things from these books, I'm always left feeling like, why can't I have this morning routine or why can't I be consistent in these habits I'm trying to stack? And it's because I've got 3 kids at home who depend on me, who I have committed to, that I'm just going to I'm going to constantly reshuffle my day. And it's not because I'm not planning well. It's just because life happens.
Mhm.
In our home, I'm the default parent like that. I'm the one in my work schedule working part-time. It allows for that. And we have, talked about it and I enjoy being the default parent. And when the time comes, sometimes we have to switch roles just based on what's happening. But because of that, those perfect time management strategies and morning routines, they tend to be inflexible when my life requires like nothing but like flexibility. The only thing consistent about my schedule is that it's going to be inconsistent.
And embracing that is hard because I feel like in my seasons being the default parent also, where I'm thinking about, oh, I want, more time to go towards building a business. I want more time to go. And then,
Right.
the kid gets sick and my
Yeah.
son broke his arm in January, and then we have the cast, and then we have the PT that's starting and all of
Yep.
that. And I know you have an example in the book about your son who had a concussion, and you had to follow, right, this protocol
Yep.
of like, okay, what are we going to do? I'm going through that however many months in until my son can like extend his arm fully. We're going
Right.
to be in this protocol. And I really loved how you talked about having this busy protocol, sort of like this plan so that when things happen, as they do,
Mm-hmm.
that we can pivot, or in the case where we know something is coming up that's going to be busy, we can plan for it and know that, like, okay, when I'm entering this busy season, like, this is what I'm going to try to do. It may not be perfect,
Yeah.
but this is what I'm going to try to do. So, can you walk us through what that busy protocol is? Because I thought that was just really brilliant.
Yeah, I equate it to like stop, drop, and roll. Like there's, if you were to catch on fire, you know exactly what to do, right? Or like when we, go on a date night and you leave your kids home with a babysitter, a lot of times you put like this emergency
Mhm.
protocol on the refrigerator, or hotels have like an exit strategy for fires. So I kind of felt like what can I feel like it empowered me having this kind of protocol, this backup plan. I love backup plans, that I can shift into when life gets crazy. So I created this like 5 step: pause, purge, prune, pass off, and protect. Pause, you're going to immediately stop. When you find yourself in a busy season, you can pivot into this, like you said, or you can look ahead and be like, okay, now is the time that I'm going to stop saying yes to things. We're going to pause taking on any new commitments because I am overwhelmed, or I know this is going to become overwhelming. And then purge. I want you to brain dump every single thing in your head onto a piece of paper. And it's just, I mean, everything, like little appointments you have to make, appointments you have, things you need to buy, things your kid needs in the future for a project at school, like anything that's weighing on you. Take the trash to the curb. Just get it down on a piece of paper so you can get kind of like an aerial look at the things that are overwhelming you. And then prune, we're going to start cutting out as much as humanly possible. Because I am a minimalist and because simplicity is my ultimate strategy for everything, we're going to prune anything and everything we can from our calendars. And sometimes that means eliminating, and sometimes it simply means simplifying the process. So, like, your kids still need to eat, your family needs to eat, right? Instead of like making homemade sourdough or having this elaborate meal plan, maybe you're going to go down to just a few meals that have a lot of leftovers that you can, power through this busy season and just eat. Make the task of feeding a family, which is heavy, easier, right? So, what can you simplify? What can you eliminate? And then pass off. Like I said, I am the default parent, but my husband and I will come together and look at this list of things weighing on me. And I'm going to start delegating to him the things he can do. I'm going to delegate to our kids things, because I think sometimes we keep doing things for our kids that they're capable of doing just out of habit, and we don't realize like what can you take on. And when our kids are in a busy season, I like to take on some of the things for them so that they can focus on school, and they've got conditioning. So we just kind of redistribute the weight and the mental load of being a family so that we can yeah, just to lighten that load so it doesn't all fall on me. Or we can also delegate to, if you have a friend who can help you in carpool, or ordering groceries. While it can be a little bit more costly, sometimes it is like life-saving in that season that you're in. So just what areas can you simplify? What areas can you delegate and get rid of and remove off of your plate? And then lastly, protect. Look ahead
Mhm.
at the margin that is coming down the road and guard it with your life.
Bubble wrap it. Let's go.
Bubble wrap it.
Yeah. I once heard this example of it can be used in your home for as far as like stuff anywhere you're feeling overwhelmed, that you're in the bathroom and there's water all over the floor and you are furiously like trying to find towels. You're like, oh my gosh, it's so messy. And you're like having all the towels, you're trying to clean it up, right?
Yep.
And then you notice that the bathtub, the water's on full blast and the bathtub is overflowing, which is why you're cleaning up with all these
Right.
towels. So you go and you have to turn it off at the source, right? So I
Yes.
feel like a lot of times we're in these like busy seasons, and if we find ourselves there unexpectedly, we're the people on the floor with the towels and we're like, oh my gosh, I gotta clean this up. But we don't always think about looking and being like, oh, the water's on, and then turning that off. And so I love that busy protocol because it's starting with that don't let anything else in. Like just turn it off.
Yes.
Then we're going to deal with the water that's in the bathtub. And then we can figure
Exactly.
out, so I just,
Great analogy.
yeah, I just love that because even if it's something that we can't plan for, which is happens quite a bit, pivoting, we have like a guide, we have guideposts for that, which I
Yep.
think is really great.
Yeah.
And I just really appreciated this book. Like I said before we hit record, I think there's 14 chapters, and every chapter I came up with like 10 questions. So I really have to like rein myself in here for overwhelmed mom friends that love us but don't need to listen to us for 3 hours. So I just really appreciate the book and the approach. Like you said, there aren't a lot of realistic time management books for women, written by women that know
Yep.
the realities of a woman and a mom's life. So I really appreciate your writing it and would love if you can tell us where people are going to be able to find the book and just how they can connect with you if they want to learn more.
Yes. So it's available where books are sold. It's available for pre-order right now as we're recording this. Yeah, and I have a blog, abundantlifewithless.com, and you can find me on Instagram at abundantlifewithless as well.
Okay. Well, I will link to all of those in the show notes. So thank you so much, Rochelle. It was really
Thank you.
awesome
I
talking to you.
appreciate it.
Hey, Mama, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, could you please share this episode with another mom who is feeling overwhelmed? Also, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a 5-star written review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Finally, if you would like more support, come on over to our free Facebook group, tinyurl.com/moms overcoming overwhelm. Can't wait to connect with you soon.